Before we get into this week's episode, I have a very special announcement I'd like to share with you all. As my valued listeners, I wanted you to be the first to know about the inaugural Women and Wealth Catalyst Summit that I'll be hosting in 2025. I hope you'll join me and some other amazing women on March 27th at the Golden Gate Club in San Francisco for a full day of impactful sessions, including fireside conversations, intimate panels, and engaging discussions with values-aligned partners. Do not miss this opportunity to ignite your path to financial success and become part of a supportive network committed to achieving wealth. Reserve your spot today at women.win. That's right, ladies, women.win. And join us for a day that will shape your financial future. If you can't join us in San Francisco, be sure to stay tuned for New York City dates and venues soon to be announced. I can't wait to see you all there.
Welcome to Getting Rich Together, the show for successful women who are looking to take their financial futures to the next level. I'm your host, Shama Bunton. When I started my wealth building journey, nobody knocked on my door to give me all the answers. So I want to talk to the experts who've done it and bring the answers to you so we can discover the right opportunities that will help us achieve the financial futures we've always dreamed of together and have fun doing it. So let's dive into this episode and start getting rich together. I am here today with an incredible powerhouse, Susan Hyatt. You are bold, courageous. You inspire so many thousands of women on Instagram, on your programs, your podcast. I mean, a media powerhouse. So I know you call yourself a life coach. I'd say you are that and so much more. Susan, thank you for being here on Getting Rich Together.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about it.
Yeah. You know, what I think is so incredible is in today's day and age, and for the last 10 years, we've all been able to really evangelize messaging and share with the world where we are and what we believe in. And I think you do such a great job of storytelling and empowering. And certainly with behind every bold and courageous woman, there was once a little girl who was starting to figure out her place in the world, looking at her adults and wondering, what about this? Or what does this mean? Can you take us back to some early days, money stories? What was life like for you?
Well, I grew up in the South, in Savannah, Georgia, and I am now a recovered Catholic. But I grew up going to Catholic school, working class parents. The early messaging around money was that you have to work hard to get it. There's always something that's going to take it from you. It's unpredictable. You have to be frugal and it's tight. You better tighten your belt, for a rainy day. And so I can remember as a child, my house was either feast or famine. My father was a milkman when I was really little. And those milk crates I used to stand on and teach class to my dolls.
So an early influencer.
An early influencer. But then he became a truck driver. So he was an entrepreneur of sorts in that he owned his rig and he would go on long distance hauls. But what that meant was that those trucks are very expensive to operate. And so if things were going great and he was getting a lot of jobs, there would be lots of snacks in the house from a child's perspective. And if a tire blew out or business was slow, it was really, really uncomfortable. And so I grew up, with a lot of messages about how hard it is and how, we're just salt of the earth, working class people. And the kinds of things I'm involved in today were not for people like us. And so I was probably the poorest kid in private Catholic school. And so I was exposed lots of people with means. So from an early age, I remember wondering, how do you get that? How do you go on vacations like that? Or what is it that they learned how to do that I could learn how to do? So from an early age, I was intrigued by money. I loved money. I would do little jobs. You want to talk about lemonade stands and dog walking and babysitting. my mom would have so much money for, say, back to school clothes. And I would say, okay, here's how much she has for jeans, but I want the Guess jeans or like whatever the designer was right at the time. And so I would go work all these jobs to upgrade myself. And so, it was an interesting, safe, beautiful childhood, but the messages I received around money were fraught with anxiety.
As you were accumulating little bits of money here and there when you were younger, sort of upgrading things as you moved along, did you find that sort of mentality around things are tight, I have to work hard, I need to be so self-directed? How did that inform you as you were, I would say, going from high school to college? I feel like college is one of those spaces really get to see other people and be on your own. And all of a sudden you're taking these early money stories and trying to apply them, not in the real world, because we're not totally in the real world, but kind of, right? What was college like for you?
Well, I was the first person in my family to go to college. So that was sort of like when I was questioning, like, what is it that some of these people I'm observing, they have more money than my family. What do they have? And at that point in time, because I just turned 50, so this was, 80s, early 90s, it was a college degree. So I was like, okay, for sure going to college. I was the first person to go to college in my family. And in my mind at that time, that was how you did it. You went to college, you got a great job with a great salary, like check all the boxes. And I remember, though, it was the 50th anniversary of a woman being able to get a credit card without a man's cosign, just 50 years ago. And when I was going away to college, all of the credit card companies were sending me applications and pre-approvals. And I remember my mother being so outraged because it wasn't that long before that she couldn't get a credit card without my father's signature. And she was like, what are they doing sending you such easy pre-approvals? But when I tell you that Susan Hyatt got her a credit card, she got a credit card. I was like, I am a rich. And so I had to learn some hard lessons in college that when you rack up a credit card bill, right, that is not free money. And so my college experience, wonderful. I loved school. I love learning. But I went into my early professional life with that, got to work hard, got to earn it, got to prove it. So those early messages were with me and it created a sense of workaholism. I was a young professional out to prove herself to the point of burnout.
Mm. And as you were in those early stages of your career, was it obvious to you to invest in 401ks? How did you start to gain these early pieces of personal finance and start to really self-manage? I mean, I understand entirely. I feel like I also, and so many of us have done the max out the credit card. And when I graduated college, I was in New York and you make a little bit of money and it goes nowhere. And so
Right.
money's tough. There's very little places to sort of learn how to save, invest, et cetera. What was it like for you?
Well, what's interesting is that I remember feeling like, wow, these are the biggest paychecks I've ever held in my hands. And I think I was making like $25,000 a year. And also, I was not at that age like, okay, let's get in. Like, I remember being so confused about how do people do that? Have enough money left? Like, how can they part with money to invest in their 401k? I was not an early investor at all. I was quite a disaster in terms of saving money. And something I should point out here is that I was married at a very young age while I was still in college to a finance major who was raised by a very frugal accountant who knew lots about how to manage money, invest money, whatever. And so you put the two of us together. We've been married now 30 years. It's a miracle that man, he just used to be like, let me break this down for you. But I was not in what I would call an investor's mindset. I was very much in, and maybe some of your listeners there right now, where it's like, I've got this money. and I want instant gratification. I did not have the ability to think about when you're 20 years old, you're invincible. You don't think you a rainy day fund. You don't think you're ever going to even be old enough to need a 401k. So this is not the story of someone who's naturally great. What I was great at was earning, and that is very different than investing. And so it was not until I want to think about this. I had my son Ryan when I was 25 and my daughter Cora when I was 27. And I was 27 years old and could not afford a $37 Christmas tree from the Boy Scout Christmas tree lot. Meaning I wasn't poor, but I was broke. Like I didn't have any extra cash. And I remember in the car crying about it. Like, how did I get to this place where I'm just earning and spending? I have no excess cash to even get this Christmas tree. And I'm well aware that there are people who couldn't afford to pay their light bill, keep groceries in the fridge. So when I'm talking about this, I'm aware that I wasn't in poverty, but I was broke. So I floated a check at my corner convenience store for this Christmas tree because I knew that guy, he would wait like 5 to 7 days to do his deposits. And so I was like, okay, so I'm going to go write him a check and I'm going to go get this tree and then I'm going to get my life together. And my husband had always worked in commercial real estate and had been saying to me, we need to be doing what I'm helping my clients. We need to be investing in real estate. We need to be thinking about these things. And so at that time, I got into residential real estate. And that was my first time as an entrepreneur. That was the first time I understood, I don't have to have someone else writing my paycheck. I can actually create my own money. And that's unlocked a different mentality in me where I started playing with the idea of, well, if I sold this many houses and had this much commission, maybe we could invest in something bigger that would be long-term wealth. And I started doing all kinds of things. I started flipping houses and taking that money and investing in commercial real estate. And so it really took me crying in the car about a freaking Christmas tree to get me to think about what am I going to do, if I don't solve this really toxic relationship I have with money.
How powerful. I mean, it's also like at what a young age also to be able to have these light bulbs go off. I'm sure you're meeting with women, and I certainly am in their, 40s, 50s, 60s, where there's still this entrapment around safety from a corporate job or safety in places that don't actually exist, and taking a bet on yourself and starting to look at yourself as I am the asset, I am the thing.
Yes.
And acting as if, you have and being the powerful creator, that you are and unlocking these opportunities. So my question for you is so many, but these first few tiptoeing your feet into real estate and obviously being a mother and a wife and certainly seeing and feeling responsible for the people you love around you and also taking a risk. What was it like when you first took this bet on yourself? How did it feel?
Terrifying. So Scott, I was talking to my husband not too long ago about this. And I was talking about how I can't remember the words I used to describe the decision that we made at the time that I would go into residential real estate. And he was like, that's not how I remember it at all. And I said, well, how do you remember it? And he goes, I remember you were tantruming. He was like, you were so angry at me, like I was making you. And the backstory is, while he had worked in commercial real estate his whole career up until that point, he worked for other commercial real estate developers. So he was a salaried employee with benefit. And I was not a coach then, but I coached him out of that job to go out on his own because he was working for a man that I didn't have the words for it then because I didn't understand it. But I can't diagnose people. I'm not a doctor, but narcissist, blaming narcissist. but we didn't understand what the hell was up with this guy at the time. And I coached him to get the hell out of there and go out on his own because I knew he could make way more money not working for that company and being on his own. But that would require me to do things different. And we decided after talking about, well, what do you think I could do to have my own set schedule? Ha ha ha. I mean, famous last words for anyone going into residential real estate. But at any rate, he chose it because I thought it would be a flexible option for me having small children. And it also wasn't. But I remember going through the real estate course, which is not easy. That class and that test is not easy. Okay. And I remember being mad. I had to take this exam, right? He was like, you were so mad you had to take the exam. I did sit on our couch and cry for hours about going to work for the first time the next day in real estate. I can see it so clearly now as a coach. Anytime you level up, anytime try something new, typically, subconsciously, there may be some self-sabotage behaviors that come. Like it's uncomfortable, it's scary, it's this, it's that. It doesn't mean it's not right for you. It just means, wow, you're really stretching beyond your comfort zone. And he was like, that's how I remember it. And I was like, yeah, well, got over that real quick. And once I got into that office and started learning how to sell real estate and meeting with clients, I loved it. I was so happy to be talking to adults and out of the house because I had stayed at home for a couple of years with these babies, and that was not the right life for me. And so I fell in love with helping people get what they want through real estate. And I was really good at it. And until I became really worn out. About 4 years into it, I started to really feel emotionally drained.
Well, you're a therapist in many ways. I mean, you're holding everyone's hopes and dreams, and you're trying to help them see themselves in their hopes and dreams in the form of a property. I mean, that's really, I'm sure you see all the things from a marital counseling point of view, in addition to people's own money traumas and money stories as they show up and say, can I invest and have the big life I want? So I can certainly see like how those experiences could be really exhausting. At what point, or was it when you were doing the residential real estate, was it during that point that you and your husband decided to were you able to start investing in these other properties, or was it sometime later? And what was that like to say, okay, we're now going to sit down, and was it a plan, or was it, hey, we just need to get started and let's go for it?
It was a decision like, let's just get started and let's get creative. So I was in residential real estate, and something that I really appreciate about Scott is that he's very creative in his thinking. And so where commercial real estate can seem boring, it actually can be very exciting. And where residential is highly emotionally charged, commercial real estate is just all about the spreadsheet. Like, does it work or does it not work? And so we decided to partner with another couple that we were friends and go together as an investor group on a project. And well, I take that back. Our first investment was a quadplex. So it was relatively inexpensive. And we bought a fourplex that a retired widow was ready to, it had been good to her for her investment portfolio, and she was ready to get rid of it. And that was our first purchase. And at that time, Scott was the one that would run over if the toilet was clogged or, those kinds of things. And that gave us the confidence to then partner with our friends on a bigger project. But it really was the decision. Like, listen, there's never going to be a perfect time. We're never going to think we're quite ready or have enough money or whatever. And we started getting creative about how to fund these real estate ventures, who to partner with. And what it really took was a change in mindset of believing that we were the kind of people who could do, because I tend to be like, oh, that's for other people coming from my childhood. And then being like, no, there are investors of all backgrounds, making money at this. Why not us?
I love that. When did your voice sort of start to expand? And tell me about the dominoes that fell as your professional life expanded and you started to really be at the top of your space and create something quite beautiful. How did you decide to become a voice for others?
Well, when I finally decided I needed to exit residential real estate, it was because I reached a point of professional burnout and I was seeking, what was I missing? I keep checking all these boxes and doing all these things that on the outside seem like, oh, beautiful marriage, beautiful kids, beautiful home. She's making lots of money. Why am I not satisfied with that? Like, what is going on? And so, I was diving into personal development and self-help. I had a therapist. I was doing all this inner work. And it was honestly, there is a great book I still think is the best self-help book of all time called Finding Your Own North Star by Dr. Martha Beck.
That's right.
That book, let me tell you about that book. Okay. That book saved and changed my life. I did all of the worksheets in the book. And then I went to train with her out in Arizona. And I was so riveted during that training. I sat on the edge of my seat. I hardly took bathroom breaks. I was just like, this is the best stuff I've ever heard in my life. And I remember on the plane ride home, I wrote my business plan on the back of a Delta napkin. I was like, I'm going home. I am going to figure out how to exit residential real estate and I am starting this coaching business. And everyone thought I was, my parents were like, work is hard. That's why they call it work. What is this life coaching thing? No one's ever heard of it. And I just remember having this clear understand that if I could just help one other woman feel less like I had felt, then it would be. And that was my promise. God, the universe. I'm like, if you just help me do this, I promise I will do you right. And when I tell you the dots connected and everything just lined up in my favor in a way that still blows my mind. In terms of within 90 days, I was like, deuces real estate. I mean, was still an investor, but I remember I had this neighborhood kid, this 17-year-old bro who cut my grass. And he also stuffed my brochure boxes for my real estate signs. I was like, go over to my office, pack it up, put it all in my garage. And I didn't even pack up my own office. And
How old were you, Susan, at this point?
I was 33. I was 33.
It's amazing. And then there you are yet again, doubling down on yourself, right? Like kind of going back in and saying, I'm going to take this different risk, this risk in a way that I don't know what's on the other side, in a way that no one's ever, at that point, it's like coaching was so new, Martha is like really like the OG of the whole space, what an incredible moment of like inner clarity, guidance from universe to be able to say like, this is what I want. How did I feel like when we're in the most alignment, the universe opens up all the doors, right? Like things happen quickly, velocity, momentum. And then certainly with that, the abundance of being able to receive commensurate to the change and impact you have in the world. You've certainly been making a lot of change and impact. How did your money thesis shift as you started to move into this new space? So now here you are starting to invest and investing in commercial real estate. You kind of have this experience in residential. The pie seems to be getting bigger and different in many ways. What are you thinking and how are you planning at that time?
Well, what's interesting money-wise at that time was that there wasn't like today, I teach coaches, but back in 2007, Martha trained you to be a coach, but then it was like, good luck. I wish you the best, right? There were no, as far as I knew, or any of my colleagues knew, any online courses at that time or classes on entrepreneurship or how to make money as a life coach. So I was grateful for my real estate background because at least I knew how to sell my, you know, realtors. all of y'all listening know a realtor who is on a billboard. They are sending you jumbo postcards, right? Realtors, if they want to eat, they have to learn how to promote themselves. And so I was using a lot of old school marketing techniques to market myself as a coach. That being said, because I wasn't sure what my business model was really going to be, the only model I knew of was Martha or coaches who operated their businesses like a therapist, where it's like, oh, you see people all day, need a knee. And that was sort of the business model. Or if you were so lucky to write and publish books, that business model is make money as a speaker, publish books, etc. And at that time, I did not foresee myself as someone who would become it. I am a writer through and through, but I never believed enough in my writing that I would dare to dream to become a published author. And I wasn't sure at $125 a session at the time, my opening rate. How in the world? I remember Scott holding a pie chart in his hand. I can still picture him in this doorway holding a pie chart and saying like, I just don't like, what's your business model? I just don't understand how you're going to make any money doing this. And I was like, get out of here. The answer is, I don't know either. I don't know. And I remember we were like, if you can just make, and I think we came up with this figure of like $50,000. If you can crack that, then we'll be fine. Like Scott's like, I'll take care of the rest. It's still like, I feel sick even saying it out loud, but the pressure was not high. The bar was low. And then there was a tipping point that happened. I had built up my email list a little bit. I was going around town speaking. And then all of that work started to, and I started to get clients and I could clearly see, oh, I think I could make six figures at this. And so my ideas started to change. And so my first year in business, I made $99,500. Hell yes. The six-figure mark. I was $100 short, but I was like, okay, hot damn. All right, there's proof of concept here. And I started building from there. But I have to say, in the beginning, it wasn't like I thought, oh, you're going to become a published author and a speaker and you're going to do all these things. I just was like, if I can help enough people to make $50,000 a year, that's great.
So you didn't foreshadow the media empire that you would have today.
Well, I honestly, I mean, I still kind of look back and think, when you just said, oh, so you were 33, I'm like, man, I was 33.
Yeah, baby.
I tell you what, it's been quite a 17 years here.
Yeah. So, what's fascinating, I feel like, when you're an entrepreneur, the number one thing we invest in is ourselves, and we have to, and we're investing in building and testing different things. And, obviously there's a point where you go, okay, this is going back into the business and this is going back into my pocketbook, and so in the course of sort of building your journey, and certainly now today you have multiple legs of the business, but at what point in your business building were you able to say, okay, now this is not going all back into the business, and now I'm able to really start having this business work for me rather than golden handcuffs of working for the business?
Right. Well, I will say, I didn't realize it until I hired, there was this wonderful man who he was more than a bookkeeper, but not quite like a CFO. And he was, I guess you would call him today a fractional CFO. And he did a lot of bookkeeping and projections for a lot of PAs. And I found out about him from a couple of coaches who really needed help getting themselves on a budget and learning how to pay themselves. And I was like, oh, anyway, I hired him. And one of the first things he said to me was, I tell everybody you do a good job of paying yourself. And I was like, it goes back to me always wanting to spend my money on myself, those Guess jeans. But I have always had a good handle on how much to invest in the business and how much to pay myself. That has not ever been a problem for me, but it took It took, I would say, maybe 3 years into my business, though, to say, okay, this profit, I'm going to let go and invest in more commercial real estate.
Ah, okay.
So for people who wouldn't consider themselves someone ready to invest in whether it's the stock market or investing in other businesses or investing in real estate, I was not a natural investor. And even today, like I'll see an opportunity and I have to sit with it for a minute and go, okay, like this chunk of money is going to go sit somewhere for a long, long time. And I understand it's the best move. And it's also like, do you ever like to have just look at your bank account balance and go, okay, like, look,
I feel safe. Yeah, this feels good. I feel safe.
I am an enthusiastic investor, but also somewhat reluctant.
I understand that. I think that's important to highlight. We hear so much about investing and everyone should start investing. And the truth of it is, it's hard to get over the emotional side. It can be easy to hit the button, but it can be difficult to muster the emotional and psychological framing to say, okay, can I let go of this and trust, that I'm maybe not going to make 100% of the right decisions, but I'm going to learn. And over time, most of my decisions will hopefully really, really pan out. That's it. It's something that I don't think we think about when we're giving out the list of things to do. This is what makes you financially secure, but investing can be challenging, especially if you weren't raised to think that way or raised to think that money is energy and you can put it out there and it will, come back to you. Well, over obviously the course of you now doubling down on yourself twice, right? Through real estate, through launching this practice, your babies were growing up and they were watching their mama go through all of these risks and really doubling down on what you wanted to create and impact. How do you think the money stories have been for your little ones in terms of the example, the life that you've led with them, and some of the knowledge and wisdom that you've imparted?
Oh, such a good question. So do you remember the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
I sure do.
So I raised a Ferris. So I have my son is very much Ferris. So I would say he is more the side of me that likes to treat yourself. And my daughter, Cora, who is 23, she lives in Brooklyn. She has a roommate. She's the one who pays the household bills for her and her roommate reimburses her. She's very, very good with her. But both of them, I will say, saw two entrepreneurial parents having the ability to have time freedom, have freedom of vacation. They grew up in a household where we didn't have to ask off or ask to take a vacation. Like if they had something at school, we could go. If it was spring break, of course we were going to come place, so I think it's interesting how they value creating your own paycheck, but also they value very much, they're Gen Z. They value very much time freedom as well. And so they will say things like, I don't know that I want to necessarily do this job because that would mean I would have to give up this time or this ability. My son, Ryan, is in commercial real estate and he also got certified as a life coach. So he's the hybrid of my husband and I. And this is the teenager who was like, when I grow up, I'm going to be nothing like you two. Oh yeah, you're exactly like us too. And my daughter, Cora, is a grant writer for a nonprofit, but she also has some side hustles and she's actually helping write grants to get my body positivity into schools. So
wow.
So that's come full circle as well. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you must be so proud. Like how wonderful to lead by example and be able to have your kids look at you guys and be like, wow, okay, my parents are modeling for us, the behavior to believe in ourselves and to take risk. I know I wish that I had that when I was younger. I'm sure that most people wish that they had they had that sort of modeling. You know, looking at the legacy that you are building today, as you're sort of looking at Susan Hyatt at 110 years old, and you know, with all this longevity and all the longevity science out there, it really wouldn't put it past me to be able to say that with some earnestness. But as you're sort of thinking of the legacy that you are leaving and the body of work that you're creating, what does that look like for you?
Wow. I know. I definitely have planned my 100th birthday party in my head already. So I'm with you on the longevity thing. I'm like, oh, yeah, I am absolutely here for vitality at all age. I think a couple of things. I mean, my goal really is to close all of the gaps, to work on closing the wage gap, the confidence gap, the leisure gap, the orgasm gap, right? I really am a girl's girl. I want, when people remember me, I want the legacy to be that she worked to help women have more of what they want. And so that means feeling free in your body, feeling free with your money, feeling free to express yourself how you want to. And so I know between now and my 100th birthday, I'll have some more books published. I hopefully will have the ability to witness grandchildren and see the different generational shifts continue and see like what family of origin wounds are healed, you know, even from my kids to their kids. So yeah.
That's really powerful. You know, the work that you're up to today is on that path, darling. And so I see all of that coming to fruition. I'm especially inspired by the work that you do around, you know, helping women reclaim their confidence and reclaiming bodies. And I'm so inspired by your journey and your weightlifting and how you've really just embraced who you are today and the things that you want. And I think that that is powerful. And a big part of that is investing in yourself, investing in the resources and tools to make more money so we can do more of the things that we want. You know, I'd love for you to share a little bit about, you know, what you're working on today and how we can join the movement of becoming the best investors in a 360 way, right? The Investor 360 by Susan Hyatt. What?
Thank you. So I think an easy way for people to jump in and start to learn to see themselves differently as an investor. My husband, Scott, and I just created something called the Profit from Property Challenge. And it's designed as part of our Women Invested movement to help demystify how to get started in commercial real estate investing and how to find things to invest in, how to fund it, and also how to join investor groups and get started as simply as we did. Because we were just, you know, regular people who couldn't afford a Christmas tree when we got started.
Yeah, you know, I think I was mentioning continue before we jumped on here, but that's how I found you, Susan. I was at my wit's end trying to figure out about real estate, and you know, I was looking for expanders and specifically women who were able to share this information, and really because as women we understand not just obviously the basics that the men do, but also the emotional and kind of social conditioning that kind of keeps us from doing these things. I remember sitting in my bathtub and saw your landing page on real estate, and I was like, wow, who is this powerhouse woman who's out here educating and inspiring? So that is a very exciting initiative. Susan, as you are looking to, you know, these next coming years and books and topics and speaking, you know, aside from your programs, what else can we do to help you evangelize your mission? What are you calling in from the universe, and what is next right now?
Thank you so much. I think if people want to help spread the word about my podcast, it's called You've Got Nerve. And there's tons of examples and stories of women who are getting up the nerve to do a variety. But I think what I'm calling is just women who want more and who want to change the narrative of what's possible for themselves, what's possible for their daughters, and reclaim their power. And so, you know, I think that there are a lot of ways people can engage with my work that that don't cost anything. The podcast, the blog, and as well as events. I throw events all over that are low cost.
Well, sign me up. Consider me a super fan over here in San Francisco. And thank you, Susan. It's been a gift to hear your journey, your story, how you've committed your life to inspiring and helping others, how you have committed your life to you. And I think that, the very first thing we need to do is self-love, and then we can create from the overflow. And I think your story and how you've done so is very inspiring. So thank you for being here today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Getting Rich Together. Please take a minute to subscribe. And if you like this episode, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend who is ready to elevate their financial future. Until next time, let's keep getting rich together.